Hello my beautiful watchers and welcome back to Lost in Adaptation, the web show about comparing films to the books they're based on. Today we get to have a look at the heartwarming tale of a middle-aged man who constantly undresses in front of two preteen boys. Tell me I'm wrong. Captain Underpants is a series of picture books created by American author and illustrator Dav Pilkey. The first issue was released in 1997 and to date has run for 12 installments. The general setup is two young boys, George and Harold, attempt to evade punishment for a string of pranks they performed on their school by hypnotizing their tyrannical school principal, Mr. Krupp, into thinking that he is Captain Underpants, the superhero of their amateur comic books. Then they have to run around after him trying to keep him from harm as he attempts to actually fight crime and supervillains. Eventually, switching him back and forth between his real personality and his superhero alter ego becomes possible, and he actually gains superpowers down the line, so summoning him becomes an actual solution to alien invasions or killer toilet attacks. The books tend to be fairly light in the words department, as is the way of picture books for a young audience, and they often incorporate a flipbook element to depict some action sequences. Despite this setup and the title, this really doesn't feel like a superhero story. The main theme appears to be more focused on the kids defying authority and being themselves, and Captain Underpants often feels downright secondary to that. This actually led to something of a revelation for me. You see, ever since I started bemoaning my age to friends and family, I've been vehemently assured that 34 isn't old, but now I have proof. You see, this is a picture book about the young sticking it to the old, and I find myself siding with the old. I just want these little brats to shut up and stop making life hard for their overworked and underpaid teachers, and yes, that includes the unnecessarily aggressive principal. Admittedly, I don't condone the blackmail and free child labor he extorts, but his attempts to stop them from constantly pranking everyone at the school I am hard in favor of. Just give me a cane and a cloud to yell at. Right, well, now that I've got that out of my system, I'm now going to pull a complete 180 and talk about the value of these books. Pilkey apparently went through quite a lot of shit in his youth, being a lad with dyslexia and ADHD in a school system that clearly had no understanding of these things and equivocated his difficulties with intentional misbehavior, so hard relate on literally every part of that. These books were clearly an outlet for a lot of the feelings he built up in that time and a way for him to help kids going through the same thing past their feelings, and by all accounts it seems that he was pretty successful in that, so big ups to him. I was shocked to discover these books faced as much backlash as they did. They actually hit #1 on the list of most banned books in America in 2012, beating out 50 Shades of Grey. People were more okay with butt plugs and abusive relationships than they were with kids are laughing at toilet jokes. Complaints against them seem to vary wildly in legitimacy. The most common seems to be pearl clutching regarding the themes of misbehaving at school, and while I have shared my own geriatric opinion on that, the idea of banning the books because of it is absolutely ludicrous. There were, however, slightly more justified complaints directed at an unfortunate book that he created outside of the Captain Underpants series, titled The Adventures of Ook and Gluck, Kung Fu Cavemen from the Future, which depicted multiple harmful racial stereotypes. To the man's credit, Pilkey didn't pull a washed-up comedian move and double down or blame PC culture. He acknowledged his mistake and supported the discontinuation of the book, leading me to believe his claims that it was a well-intentioned attempt to show diversity that was simply phenomenally badly delivered. Moving on to the film, apparently DreamWorks Entertainment were eyeing up this series for adaptation as far back as the first issue, but met resistance from Pilkey, who was not convinced they would do justice to his story. Allegedly, they even went as far as to invite him to their studio and give him a tour while wearing their underpants outside of their trousers. Pilkey still held back on auctioning off the rights until 2011, after which DreamWorks immediately snapped them up. Robert Letterman was originally slated to direct, but eventually switched to an executive producer role, and David Soren of Madagascar fame took up the reins. Kevin Hart and Thomas Middleditch were cast in the lead roles, along with Ed Helms, Nick Kroll, Kristen Schaal, Brian Posehn, Leslie David Baker, Gray Delisle, and Jordan Peele. Oh, and Weird Al Yankovic was brought in to write the songs. More movies should do that. It premiered in 2017 with the title Captain Underpants, the first epic movie. To date it remains the only movie, but it did spawn a Netflix spin-off series that ran successfully for 4 seasons, so it's not quite another tale of hubris leading to an embarrassing name. Ironically, after courting it for so long, after an internal reorganization, DreamWorks ended up outsourcing the animation of the movie to companies in Canada and France. This resulted in the eventual movie being something of a black sheep of the DreamWorks family, with a more unique look than their usual productions. Right, let's talk adaptation. Because the 4 storylines of the book are mashed together into one as opposed to occurring sequentially, the parts of the film that are true to the source material come off more like references and callbacks than direct adaptations, but to be fair, there are a lot of them, which counts for something. George and Harold's string of pranks at their school, leading to Principal Krupp developing an obsessive need to catch them in the act and punish them, eventually capturing the lad's mischief on camera. Their desperate last-ditch attempt to escape the consequences by using a toy hypnosis ring on him, which, against all expectations, actually works, having him run through a bunch of humiliating activities before forcing him to assume the persona of the OC superhero. Captain Underpants immediately escaping out of a window and stumbling into falling a bank robbery. The lads discovering they can reset his mind back to being corrupt by dumping water on him and underpantsing it up again every time someone snaps their fingers. A professor from a place called New Switzerland, unfortunately named Poopy Pants, getting a job as the school's science teacher and eventually being driven into a murderous rage by the children's constant laughter and attempting to lay waste to the world using a shrink ray and a giant ribbit. The boys and their naked adult friend attempting to save the day, resulting in Captain Underpants actually gaining superpowers and life briefly returning to normal before they're dragged into another adventure with the monster they created. By that I mean Captain Underpants, not the toilet side, just in case that wasn't clear. While DreamWorks' decision to animate the movie outside of their usual pipeline was undoubtedly fiscally motivated, a happy side effect of this was it was very close to Pilkey's original art. It looks like they took them straight off the page and made them 3D. Impressively, the film managed to work in references to the fourth wall breaking the boys occasionally took part in, their constant concern that things were getting too violent for child content, and the flip-o-ramas. I would have expected these things to come off as awkward and forced, but the charisma of the actors really sells it. The movie leans more overtly into the book's main theme of exalting the virtues of the kids' friendship with each other and the beauty of their childish senses of humor. This actually pushes Captain Underpants into the background in the climax, which is something that apparently happened quite often in later sequels. Oh, and they included the giant hand from the book, so there's that. Giant hand. Check.
Then I'll take that. Ow! Did you just slap me?
Yes, I did. And you deserved it.
No, I didn't. Your hand is huge. That hurt a lot.
Now, I admitted my old man bias on this already, so take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, but I think one of the most significant changes in the film is the kids are no longer total assholes. Just hear me out. Unlike in the film, in which George and Harold's pranks were motivated by wanting to cheer their classmates up and exclusively targeting them at the deserving, resulting in fun and laughter for all, the little snots of the comic tended to target everyone, making the entire school miserable, the book's own words, and amusing only themselves. They glued everyone's asses to their seats, presumably ruining their clothing. They sabotaged the other kids' science projects that they clearly worked very hard on. Look at this kid's miserable face. Look at it! They gaslit a teacher into questioning his own sanity, drove multiple members of staff into resigning their jobs, and spoiled the lunch lady's attempts to surprise the entire school with delicious muffins. On top of that, in the book, they caused most of the problems they needed to fix with Captain Underpants. They literally created several supervillains just by being little assholes. I totally endorse the they're just kids being kids and trying to have fun thing, but it comes at the expense of the happiness of everyone around them. Again, I know this makes me exactly like the old people that Pilkey calls out and makes fun of in his books, but the filmmakers clearly saw it too because they removed all of this stuff. By being so much more discerning about who they messed with and how they went about it, George and Harold of the movie are way more likable in comparison. Moving on, like many stories based on children's media that were originally released some time ago, the film has updated its humor somewhat to appeal to the adults its audience have now become. Nothing too egregious, just some little jokes here and there. Though on the flip side, they seem to have removed a few, I assume, accidental innuendos from the original. Wow. Instead of forcing them to do increasingly inappropriate tasks for him, Film Krupp decides to use his evidence of wrongdoing to justify splitting the boys up into separate classes to ruin their friendship. Still a dick move, but at least not something the FBI might need to look into. Melvin, the nerdy snitch, and Poopy Pants are made more obviously evil to reduce the moral ambiguity of the boys' poor treatment of them, and, in an unexpected move, the film also works towards humanizing Krupp. The kids find out he leads kind of a sad, lonely life and end up setting him up on a date after the climax. Because of the new medium, the film plays around with some fast-paced humor that's not really possible in written form, especially in the way that Krupp can be switched back and forth between his two personalities.
Tra-la-la! Harold! Tra-la! George! La!
We should probably stop.
Yeah, we probably should.
Stop doing this!
There were some things that fell to the wayside as they combined the 4 stories, but not as much as you might think. Many things weren't exactly as they appeared in the book, but few things were completely ignored, which is actually pretty impressive. It was basically a few of the monsters of the week, generic evil villains, and some aliens with unusual motivations. The only thing that I think fans of the book would have been just a little disappointed not to see was the choose your own silly name thing that the professor wanted to use to punish the world with, but was clearly intended for the reader to be able to take part in.
Oh no.
Nice try. Turtle and I have grown quite attached. We're inseparable, actually. I carry him wherever I go, including the shower!
Oh, poor turtle.
Final thoughts. Taking into account that this could never have been a word-for-word adaptation, even if the book had had enough words for that to be feasible, because it's 4 stories mushed together, I think this was a pretty faithful adaptation of the main theme and feel of the original. I also liked that they not only recognized but accentuated the core message of shut up and let kids enjoy their toilet humor, you old gits. It's also one of the best examples of said story mushing that I've seen in a while, and I was also impressed with how well it handled incorporating the new humor to match the adult audience and new medium without changing where the humor derives from. All in all, I am glad that this film did well despite being completely overshadowed by Wonder Woman at the box office. According to my survey, it seems like a lot of the book's fanbase haven't actually seen it yet, so in the unlikely event that you were waiting for someone random to give it a seal of approval, it's got mine. Thank you for joining me, my beautiful watchers. Don't forget to do that good YouTube stuff with the liking and the sharing and the subscribing if you're new. Take care of yourselves out there, and I hope to see you next time. Much love and appreciation to my patrons of honor, Shelby Holtz, Atel Spurdloff, and Trace Carter. Shout out to Ilnej for the credits music, check out his channel for more parody and original songs, and a huge thank you to this video's co-producer, Kate Robinson. She does some awesome work on her channel, so be sure to check that out too. Once you're so determined to be in the bloopers again, do not attack my foot. Come in. I don't know if there's going to be enough bloopers in this one, so here's Kat. Hello, Kat. Say hello. Say hello to the beautiful watchers. You floofy little beautiful bastard.